Hello, everyone. Today I'm in the new location. It's kind of overloaded with stuff on the walls and everywhere. If you want, we can check it out a bit later during the stream. And today we have a very interesting guest. It's Ryan Carniato, a creator of the Solid framework. If you know Svelte, then Solid kind of takes the same path, same route, instead of being, it's kind of frameworkless framework. The framework is basically a compiler. And if I'm saying something wrong, then Ryan will correct me. And say hello to Ryan. Hey, Ryan.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Did I say something completely wrong, or was I kind of right about the Solid framework?
Close. It's kind of complicated. Solid is actually sort of a hybrid, I would say, the best way to put it. The actual main way it works is runtime based. The reactive system is runtime, so that does differ a bit from Svelte. The compiler compiles the JSX only, actually. And we just make those optimizations. So we get a lot of the similar optimizations around like DOM creation and DOM updating. Yeah, it's kind of somewhere in the middle between, say, React and Svelte in that sense.
So there is no virtual DOM. You only compile JSX to actual DOM nodes. And so what is left? State management and actual, basically state management for the components, right?
Yeah, the state management is like the runtime portion. It's a reactive system. I basically took something like MobX and and Vue recently exposed theirs in Vue reactivity, but basically everything, the whole system is the reactive system. There's no VDOM, there's no, like, even the components, the renderer, it's basically all just reactive side effects. If you've used MobX, you might have seen auto run. Yeah. The biggest defining feature, I guess, of Solid is the auto runs aren't the whole component. They are individual bindings in many cases. So basically, I'm just taking that granular reactive system and applying it to the problem of rendering. And the compiler kind of irons out both gives you performance and irons out all the kind of awkwardness you'd have of wiring this up by hand. It kind of optimizes this for you.
But it's kind of completely abstracted, because from what I saw, the API looks almost exactly like React, very, very similar. And that's what I like about it. Because when I tried to use Svelte, I'm using React for way too long. I'm already like Reactified my brain. So I was like, whoa, I can have the same perks, but still write Reacty kind of code.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, all these libraries are kind of similar. Svelte hides it intentionally to make it easy behind a lot of like the language features. I like React myself personally. I like the explicitness. I like the control. I like being able to be like, this is state, this is not state, right? Like, have that kind of clear distinction of what can update and when. The only
one monodirectional data flow. That's the best. Yeah, there is no two-way data binding like in Svelte.
Yeah, exactly. All those kind of control features that you get from being explicit, right? That's really what I like. It was just the technology difference. I thought that we could do this with the reactive system, and with modern tech we can hide it. See, in the past we had this, and the old reactive systems weren't as good. They didn't have the guarantees for glitch-free and synchronous execution, but they also made it more onerous on the end user to actually do the work. I like where React has landed API-wise in terms of having this, level of control. The only difference is, I don't like the hook rules. I don't like the stale closures. So, Solid aims to kind of use a reactivity to solve that while maintaining that control that isn't kind of buried in the easiness of language features. And
So sorry to interrupt, but you said an interesting thing, that you don't like the hook rules. And does it mean that in Solid, you can actually have a hook inside of a condition or inside of a loop?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's
completely.
Really interesting.
Yeah, so like, exactly. And what I was getting to is just like, actually, you know what? I lost my train of thought. We'll get there again. I'm positive. But more just in terms of that control and explicitness, that, right, now I remember, it was that this just means that what's cool about using reactivity here is that you just get this one system for these hooks or primitives, and it's just universal when it's explicit like that. Like we don't have two syntaxes. If you know, like Svelte, for example, you have if depending on how familiar with it, you have these $ operators, and they built it into language, which is really cool and something I'm exploring in my other work. But with explicit reactivity, it's just the same interface everywhere, whether you're doing global stores, whether you're doing in the components. And the key difference here is if you've used React context before, you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
People were like, oh, this could replace Redux or whatever, but it doesn't really, because context has performance implications. If you're using the local state, it'll cause every component below to re-render if you do things naively, and it doesn't scale well as the app grows. Whereas with granular reactivity, we don't have that downside. So basically, you can just use the context API freely with these primitives, and it's just always the same. Like there's not two different APIs. You just have a couple simple primitives, and that handles everything from state management to local component scope to pretty much everything, and a way that the framework can optimize.
That's really awesome. I'm kind of eager to try. I'm going to announce what are we going to do today. So I have this. Let me share my screen. How do I do this? Share screen. All right. So I have this app that I'm using in every other stream, Goblin Store. It's nice because it has a lot of features that web apps have. We use local storage to store the items in the cart. We have all the data is loaded from the backend. We can go to the cart. We have navigation. We have multiple pages. We have context data, and I think this is the products that we store in the context. And we work with forms and so on. So my initial idea was that we are gonna rewrite this, slowly migrate this to Solid. But Ryan said that this might not be the best idea and the best approach.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to piecewise replace Solid and React because their update cycle is completely different. Like it's already a little bit challenging to like embed a Preact app in a React app or whatnot. There's configuration conflicts, like the way the JSX is transpiled or whatever. It is possible to set it on per file basis, but you basically get in this zone, like especially if you're using TypeScript, like it gets kind of messy. And in the case of Preact, you just pull the plug. You just go, now React equals Preact, done, pretty much. Solid has a completely different execution model. As I said, it doesn't have React compat. So realistically, while your components can somewhat be lifted and moved into the new system, you probably need to do it all in one go, or consciously break off part of the app and be like, okay, everything over here is Solid, and then kind of build it almost like a sub app. Like basically it would require some kind of wrappers and stuff to actually make it work, and it's kind of heavy. And so I while maybe at your company you might take this approach to kind of piecewise introduce Solid, in the terms of a live stream, we'd be constantly adjusting and moving those wrappers around, and it's just this kind of heavy bulk that I don't think is really practical to.
I would still kind of mention them, and also I would answer this comment. Could we see the initial Lighthouse scores before starting the migration? Pretty please. I don't think we're going to do this just because the stream is going to be 2 hours tops. We probably are not going to finish the whole migration. I think we're going to be lucky if we finish migrating the first screen. And the approach is, as far as I understand, right, Ryan, that we're going to just start from scratch to not have those compatibility issues. What I wanted to show that there is this library called Solid Rectifier, right?
So which?
I think it's Solid Rectify. No, it's just Rectify.
Oh, no. Right.
You know what I'm talking about? I'm trying to find it.
Published library, or was this one of like I did something as a code sandbox at one point, just to kind of do a proof of concept, but I didn't actually publish anything.
But there, the syntax looks kind of nice. So if I would actually have the task to migrate from React to Solid, and I would have to use this.
Oh, you're talking about React Solid State, I think maybe is what you're talking about.
I should have saved that link. It's a Reddit thread where someone asked.
One thing I did make is, I mean, was I took solid state management and wrapped it up in a library that you could use in your React components, so you could get a feel for the using those primitives and using them without worrying about the hook rules and all that kind of stuff. So you could actually get a feel for solid inside a React environment. A couple of years ago. Admittedly, it isn't as well used as my other libraries. I kind of feel like at first I wrote it before hooks came out. So I was like, okay, this would be really quite cool and useful for people to get used to this kind of primitive thing that, they might not be used to using hooks in a library like React. But then React released hooks. And honestly, this APIs and stuff are so similar that I haven't really found, the desire to oh yeah, solid. Yeah, okay. So you're talking about this though, to actually use the library very much, because you at that point you might as well be using React hooks in React because React is optimized. This was my little example where I was like, what does it take to put a solid component in a React app? And but the one thing that this example kind of skims over here is that I'm only doing the JSX compilation in the Solid app, because in Code Sandbox it was going to be hard to actually do the JSX. So that's why you see the React outer wrapper is just in like create element calls. It was just simpler. Like, it is possible to configure this properly. I just this is not an easy path to go on. You're almost better to completely isolate it. Maybe throw something in a web component. I think those barriers would be semi, permanent if you were going to go this way, right?
In Mojang, we use sort of what is happening. In Mojang, we use the micro frontend approach, where we have a bunch of frontend applications that we mount to the page separately. So for us, it would kind of be easy, because we have a lot of entry points and we can separately migrate each of the applications. For monolith, yeah, probably it would be a lot of work, let's say. But you say that it's possible. So if the person wants to go with migration step by step, it's doable, just hard.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, unfortunately, this is one of those things where I kind of feel, it's unfortunate. People see the library and their first thought is like, oh, it's just like React. I can just swap this in. This will be easy. It isn't easy in that sense. I really did stray from it. It is more like writing Svelte for people who like React. Like it's like, that's more of the mentality. I do that much. I actually do arguably more optimization in terms of actual performance type stuff.
Solid is faster.
What? I mean,
Solid is faster.
Yeah, generally speaking, I have not yet seen any benchmark in which Solid is not faster, but I mean, I'm sure maybe someone could come up with one that it is. But generally, that was. I feel like I started in a similar place as Rich, though. Like, I was sitting there going, okay, my favorite reactive libraries have died out. It's 2015. No one wants to use Knockout anymore, that kind of thing. And I was like, but there's something. This approach has legs. And I was like, I just basically was determined to prove that this could be fast in almost any kind of benchmark. Because the VDOM libraries kept on presenting all these data snapshot stock ticker benchmarks. And as much as they make like cool demos where you can see like, look at the power of our diffing, at least in the types of apps I've built, this is not the common paradigm at all. Like, I mean, there are situations, I guess, with that, but I'm used to granular updates. The end user only interacts with part of the page at the time. You're doing navigation, sure, you create some nodes there, but you're not spamming it every 500 milliseconds or whatever with real-time full data diffs. It's just not the way apps work. So when you look at benchmarks that do more realistic things like managing lists and tables, that's where Solid, and even doing animations, that's where Solid just demolishes a lot of VDOM library approaches. But to be fair, there are some very fast VDOM libraries. I think this, after that whole pure overhead thing, VDOM libraries got a bad rap, let's say. There are several VDOM libraries that consistently score high, like things like Inferno.js, which have a React-like API, their own custom JSX compilation. And yeah, Inferno, I would also say confidently is faster than Svelte. So it's not, and HyperApp, that's another VDOM library that's faster. I would say there's a lot of, this technology choice has benefits that go beyond performance. I think, it's my position that, you can get to really close to optimal performance with these reactive approaches if you work at it. Well, maybe not the end user if I work at it, but on the other hand, I don't think the technology is as big of a limiting factor as people often like to make it out to be.
Yeah. To be honest, in my experience, I almost never had problems with React performance even, and it's not the fastest library at all. React has this big upside, let's say, huge benefit that you can use it on any platform. It doesn't matter what you want to output. Like you can output JSON, you can output text, you can output DOM. Is it possible with Solid?
Yeah. I mean, and this is the thing. Like the native elements are DOM specific, and I do a lot of DOM specific optimizations, but the reactive system is still very performant. I made sure, in separate benchmarking, that Solid's reactive system itself is one of the faster than MobX, faster than Vue. I really focused on performance across the board. And the truth of the matter is, there's two approaches to this. You could have it compile native-like elements where you can get even greater optimization. And Svelte has been looking at that, I think, a bit with their 3JS integrations and stuff. Mm-hmm. But just on a simple level, the component system of Solid, because it's not DOM tied itself, Solid's components are literally functions. Like they're not even components. They don't actually hold state. They get compiled out. But they do serve as a conduit for the reactive system. And for that reason, you can wire up the components in like a context API and basically make other renderers, right? I made that silly cube that you saw was it a year or two ago, with the spinning cube on.
Could you show it? Could you share the screen with this demo?
Yeah, let's see if I can pull that one out. It's been a while, or I can at least send you the code sandbox.
Yeah, I can open it if you send me.
To be fair, this demo is kind of silly in that, like the whole point of it was that it doesn't even use this framework. The whole thing is one reactive atom. What this means is that the Solid approach here isn't optimized for handling the GL part of it, but it was optimized for handling, just using the reactivity to update, which meant it was one of the fastest implementations in terms of like FPS. I just shared you the link, the code sandbox. But a more practical example would be, I recently saw someone. I was helping them. It's closed source, so I can't share this one. But I was helping them build an alternative renderer where they used a canvas, and there was only one DOM canvas element, and everything else was. To be fair, this isn't code sandbox. So you might be hitting a little bit of glitches there, but I don't know if people remember this silly thing. If you scroll down, there's. If you scroll down in where the box view is, there's a styling issue. Just up it up, a few,
should be enough.
Oh no, keep on going. Let's.
Right. I'm kind of scared to do 10,000.
That one might crunch your computer, but
okay, I might have made a mistake.
That one might crunch your computer, but the 2,000 should be good. My computer, generally that was getting 60 FPS at 2,000. But yeah, I mean, this is that old demo for a couple of years ago. But what I was getting to is the more practical example. Someone was using a single canvas element, and they were actually constructing and rendering the canvas using context API and Solid components. So the whole UI looked like a bunch of Solid components, circle, div, whatever, like not div, sorry, circle, square, box, whatever. Like they look like a bunch of shapes, and they drew them, just wrote them out like normal components, and then it was rendering it to canvas. This kind of stuff, you don't need, the reason it's a big deal in React is because they use a diffing system. So like they're like, oh, we do the diff, and then you can apply the patches. Well, in a reactive system, it's just events. So if you know how to handle events, then you can kind of do this. That little create boxes is literally the gist of the whole reactive update. It's just a batch of setting some counts and setting the new box array. And
is it just recreating a bunch of boxes over and over?
Well, it should be, this is for the initial creation, to be fair. Generally, what this is doing is it's animating a bunch of boxes. So based on the number of boxes you have, the count is what's triggering that, which adds the extra boxes to go from like 10 to 2,000. But generally speaking, this is what the thing with this is, I just abstracted some things like scene, perspective, camera, directional light. There's a mesh component, and basically I just abstracted a few things, and inside these components, yes, it's much more imperative logic, right? It's just wrapping some 3GS calls, but you can see very easily how someone could write a library that abstracted this pretty easily and give you components. Like, you don't need to be React to have different renderers. You don't need diffing.
That's really cool. And by the way, about the frame rate, remember that you probably had 60 FPS, but you did not stream at the moment, right?
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So I think it would be a bit faster, quicker if I wouldn't be streaming. Well, very cool demo. And I really like that, you can actually use this instead of React for the purposes, so there could be solid native.
Yes, and even though I haven't explored that, I've been focusing on server-side rendering for the last year or so in terms of my second target, because I do treat server like it's a second target. It's a completely different compilation and stuff. It is completely possible to do this kind of stuff. I saw a project for a few years ago. One of the big influences of Solid was a library called Surplus from about 4 years ago. I was actually kind of working with the creator a bit, trying to broaden it out and get that going. But he was busy and he wasn't really maintaining it anymore. And I started Solid. I was already working on Solid, but I kind of split off. I liked his compiled approach to JSX. That's where I got that idea from him. But he had his own custom compiler, so I rewrote it kind of in Babel and kind of tried my own thing. But someone else had taken that old Surplus compiler and actually had it compiling to native script. So I've actually seen a project where they basically use this approach on native. I just haven't actually had the time to actually look at it and do it.
That's great. I think this is exactly the reason why I think that Solid might have really big future, to be honest, because it's universal. You can use it anywhere. You can adapt it to, just like React. React like syntax and React like possibilities to use. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I think it cannot be done with Svelte. Svelte is it's bound to web only.
Well, Svelte's a compiler, so basically, you saw how easy I made that 3J.
It's impressively easy.
Right. Well, the thing is, with Svelte, you can kind of do that too. Although I'm not sure if it depends if the components are DOM components. My suspicion is with Svelte. It might need compilation. Like, basically, they have that path open to them, but someone's probably going to write a compiler for it. That's kind of the idea. Take Svelte's a language. A language can be expressed across multi-platforms, right? So I expect that to be the thing. The difference with obviously something like Solid, where it's got that dynamic runtime aspect, is you can literally just make a component do whatever. It's just a function call. Put whatever JavaScript you want in it,
Cool. And I see that we've been talking for half an hour, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And we also need to implement at least something today.
Yes. Okay.
A little bit of live coding.
Let's get started with something.
Yeah. We can continue talking, and I want you to guide me because, and if you could also look at the chat. I'm going to look at the chat from time to time. If people will ask some cool questions, we're going to answer them.
Definitely, yeah. A lot of hellos so far. So hello. People who joined us a bit later.
Yeah, hey everyone. Nice to see you here. If you have questions about Solid, the future of Solid, plans, go ahead, ask. So I'm going to share my screen again. Boom. And let's go. So you say that I better create a new project, right?
Yeah, the easiest way to do that, if you haven't yet, is to do our npm init command, and it's npm init solid space app. Are we going to do TypeScript today or no TypeScript? Maybe no TypeScript.
Let's do TypeScript. I'm kind of used to TypeScript more than JavaScript.
Oh, you want TypeScript? Okay, then make it app-ts there. And then
that's another cool thing about Solid, that it's written in TypeScript, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's written with TypeScript and has pretty good type support. And then space, and then the name of the folder you want to put it in, like whatever you want to call this app.
Solid Store.
Yeah. Go. Now, you'll notice that this takes a minute. The reason is this is a CRA clone, Create React app. I'm actively in the process of replacing this with a Vite-based starter kit, but for now, you will suffer through the exact same Create React app experience.
Sorry, Ryan, what did you say? What based?
Vite or Vite, depending on how you say it. But
okay. Yeah. Got it. It's the new, but it's not the bundler, right?
It's like it's a bundler, and like basically Evan Yu, who created Vue, made a universal bundling tool that does the whole thing where it doesn't bundle in dev mode but bundles in production, so you get ultra fast like developer experience, and because it basically doesn't have to wait to bundle, it just instantly builds as you go. And then I've implemented a new hot module reloading. Unfortunately, this Create React app is dated and it's old and it's going away. But for people familiar with React and Create React app, this should at least feel familiar as a starting point for now. But the new tooling that's coming is so much beyond where this is.
I think what might be unfamiliar to a lot of people that you can use npm init. A lot of libraries actually use this approach with npm init script, and then you say which one. I think it's bound to the name of the package.
Yeah, exactly. To get a init script, you have to have a package called create dash whatever the init script is. So that's create solid there. Svelte has been recently using that for Svelte kit. They use npm init svelte, and then they use @next because hasn't been released yet. It's the next version, but basically it's the same kind of concept. And there you go. See, it's Create React app. They even have this. I literally stole the same console logs and everything. So
okay, let's go to Solid Store. Open the editor, and what do we have in the beginning?
This is going to look really familiar because it is literally.
I have deja vu. For real, yes. Flashbacks.
This is literally Create React app.
Yeah, and that's actually cool because this is not React, this is not Preact, this is Solid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
nice.
Yeah, of course, TypeScript's already complaining in the test, man. I can't win with TypeScript, but if that's your go, that's the thing. Personally, the library works in TypeScript. I'm just, as a framework developer, TypeScript puts a lot of pressure on you to, do stuff a certain way, right? And that definitely takes a toll because you want your end users to be able to benefit from TypeScript to the greatest degree. I don't get the benefit of saying any, so to speak, right? Which you can always do in your apps.
The great benefit of Solid actually being written in TypeScript is that you get a guarantee that your type definitions will be up to date and they will be correct, unless you use any everywhere.
Yeah. Which I can't really do. Yeah. One of the things is that a lot of libraries, though, are struggling with this a little bit, and you'll see that Vue, even though it's written in TypeScript, actually ships separate types for its end users than the types it uses internally, which is an interesting choice. But yeah, and if you've been watching tweets by Rich Harris, he's been trying to promote in his libraries almost like a JS docs approach to keep things kind of simple. So there's this kind of weird tension there. That being said, TypeScript has made it difficult for me to adopt certain APIs, especially because their JSX support isn't as good. Like namespaces were only released last month, so I couldn't do a lot of namespace type syntax. But on the other hand, the benefits are just huge for the user base. People really love how you can use TypeScript. Yeah. Anyways, what's a good visual component that we can try? I mean, the first thing you can do is just fire up the app and show people what's.
Yes, that's a very good idea. And I just run yarn. Is it yarn? Yarn start?
I would usually use npm. I'm trying to remember if I kept it. I think you have to use npm here because you have to specify yarn at the beginning when you run the command. You have to yarn init it, versus npm. So we're gonna use npm here today. Yeah. So
familiar.
Yes, I just replaced the React logo with the solid shaped logo, and it's basically the same thing you probably have seen dozens and dozens of times before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the generated code is the same CSS and literally pretty much everything.
Yeah. You know what? I think we should start with this NES CSS project, because that's what makes my store look nice.
Cool. And this is just something that you stick on the index page, right? Like it's
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I was going to say this is React app, so that you don't get like the access to the web pack config unless you eject, and I don't know if we want to bother trying to eject or do anything right now. So yeah, just in here.
Yeah, I think it's good. Is there something that might prevent us from using the font that I want? Yes. What do they recommend using there? Why is this here? Okay. They say that we want to use press start 2p. Font family. What? Okay, let's say press start 2p.
Was your other example started as a create React app, or was it
It was also create React app, yeah.
Yeah,
it's from my book, actually. So yeah, it's create React app so that the readers could easily re-implement it themselves.
Right, which is good. That means that this will be very, very similar experience, because I literally just like lifted and replaced a few things for this starter. It served us well, other than it's heavyweight. When people see Solid, they expect something light and fast just because of how light and fast the library is. Whereas with Create React app, it isn't. Yeah.
Okay, we got the font and we got somewhat the styles.
Yeah.
That's cool. We can continue now. All right, let's look at some components. I was thinking we could start with routing. We were discussing it just before the stream. Where should we start? Because there is a React Router. Ryan, you said that it has kind of similar API to React Router DOM. We could implement empty pages. Let's do it. You know what? Let's actually do not the way we intended.
We might need to pull up the docs here so I can see. There's a few little differences, but I think that I'm just looking here at the docs here. Basically, I'm going to use Solid Router by RTurnQ. Or I don't know how to pronounce, but anyways, it's the most popular Solid router that is based on the React Router library. I've been working on a router myself, but the router that I use is been developed specifically for like that Svelte kit meta framework kind of scenario. So it's a little bit different. I think for this we want something that is different. It's actually namespaced at. I think it's at, I can send the command, but it's at our, I'll just send you the command. It's easier.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the install this router. The API is like a little bit different. Oh, let me see here.
Okay, there is an interesting questions. What does the exact path mean in router? Can you explain in a couple of words? So simply speaking, when you use the exact flag, it means that only if the path matches exactly, then this route is being shown. Otherwise, no, only the exact matches. Like, for example, if your route is / and this is when you usually want to use it, and your route, the actual URL in the browser is / because every URL will start with it, and then something. If you don't use exact, it will always match with them, and you will only see the home screen. So you use exact so that it matches only with the / itself. Okay.
Yeah.
We have something in Russian. Nice logo. Yeah, people like the logo. That's cool. Gotta get rid of those class names. I guess we won't get rid of the class. Will we?
We could go either way. I support both.
But that's cool.
Yeah. You can just use class in Solid if you want to. I've tried to keep things as close to the DOM spec. Like you can also even use the lowercase on click if you want to. Like although that's a weirder one, because let's be fair, like click events are strings in more traditional, like HTML. So it's not. I don't think that it's distinction as important, but yeah, I keep stuff as close to DOM, as possible, so you can copy and paste HTML code in.
So it will work both ways, React way and non-React way. Huh.
Mostly, there's places where I don't implement the React way. I don't have full React compat. Like, I don't alias the on-change event for you. Like in React, they have this whole crazy thing around on-change. When people really want is the, what should I call it? They want the on-input event, but React kind of aliases on-change to input. I don't do stuff like that. So yeah.
I'm just cleaning up things.
Yeah, getting rid of like all the typical create garbage.
Okay, we need to import the router. So it's import. I've turned off the auto-completion because it's a lot of visual mess when you do the streams and recordings, but now I forgot the name of the package. It's solid router, and we probably need to actually wrap our application into the router provider, right?
Yeah, although to be fair, we can do it here. One difference in React API that you're going to see, and I'm kind of cheating here in this example because I know we can. Technically speaking, the thing we pass into the app is a function. Solid lazily evaluates everything due to its reactive nature, so you don't just pass app.jsx like initialize. That's why, like, if you see here, app is a function, not the app as a component. If we want to make the router and do the provider and do all this stuff here, we're going to have to return a lambda function.
Got it.
Into that first, exactly, and then do everything here. Yeah.
Wait, what is it complaining about? String literal expected. What?
It's because you're returning null right now. Like, you just keep on typing.
We want to have the router imported first.
Yeah. And what do they call it here? I actually have not used this outside of a code sandbox, so I'm just going to see here. It's called, it looks like it's just router is what the provider's called. So you can import router.
Right. No, probably it's going to be the whole name of the package.
And it looks actually in this example that the way they configure it is you can use like path-based or hashtag-based routing. And I think in order to, you have to basically set what, like if you're going to use hash routing or path routing. So it looks like, I'm just looking at a little code snippet here on the README, but it looks like there's an integration and path integration thing to set up the provider. So
what I did here is wrong?
Let me see here. Sorry, to switch back to that window. Let me see here. Yeah, it needs one more argument. Maybe it's easier just to pull up the link I sent you previously for the first link. I think it is the
first link. Solid router. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. If we scroll down to the top of the README, there's see right there. My understanding is it's because you can use hash state instead. Like basically, you choose what implementation you want. Is what I'm gathering here. So I think we do need
the path is the one, right?
So I think we need to add that.
Okay.
Yeah, little bit of
verbosity.
But yeah, I think this is so that probably for code splitting reasons, people who are tree shaking reasons, people who use Solid generally are like really, particular about how much code they ship. So this lets, like, if you're using hash state instead of like path-based routing, then this means that it doesn't get included in your final bundle.
What is hash-based routing?
That's something that's more common in early days of the SPA, where instead of using push state, you would just use hashes. You'll see it sometime on GitHub pages, like where you use hashes to define the different.
I know what you're talking about. For example, Backbone way, we actually use it in some applications. Got it now. Yeah, I know what it is. Nice. Okay, and we're done with the index. I've stopped sharing screen. Good job, Maxim. Let's go. We are done with the index. We can continue with the app. So what is it complaining here? Oh, of course. Here we probably want to have the route. Okay, the name of this library is just obnoxious a little bit. I can't remember it. Just no way. All right, we have the route, and probably we also will need the switch. Or am I thinking too Reacty here? Yes, we need switch.
Yeah, exactly. It's a similar API.
But it's another library.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and it's misspelled in this example. Yeah, okay, so Solid has built-in switch control. So basically, he's opted to use Solid's built-in switch control. We have control flows. See, React, obviously uses the map thing, but because reactive libraries need to memoize as they render instead of using VDOM, it means there's a bunch of helpers. And one of the things that I did was I made like a if statement helper, which is show. You can use ternaries for that, like simple, question marks. But show. I find when you use markup, altogether, it just makes the blocks tighter and it makes things look nicer. And I also have for loop, and I also have a switch case for doing like the multi-conditionals without doing a bunch of ternaries. And this router actually chose to use Solid's own switch statement to wrap the route. And yeah, let's. It's not. I think he uses a different term. I guess there's a few differences here that are just
probably end.
I think end is probably the term. I'm not sure exactly. Yeah, and it looks like it's match route instead of route. I'm gathering there's probably it's probably a router that has it's probably a route that has special behaviors around paths, which is why he did this. Again, I think a lot of this has to do with probably code splitting and tree shaking type stuff.
Got it. Okay, we have one route. Let's have two.
Yeah, as I said, you could write your own router if you wanted to use exactly React's semantics if you want.
The only thing that I don't like so far is that I have to remember RTU, RNQ.
Yeah, because someone else already released Solid Router. To be fair, I took that React approach of like it's just a library, write your own libraries, and then we ended up with within the first 6 months, like well not first 6 months, I guess a bit longer, but like about a year and a half ago, we ended up with like half a dozen different routing solutions. Like we weren't able to consolidate, which I think is great because people can kind of do stuff. But that means Solid Router is already taken by someone else. So basically, I can look and see what I can do about that. I know these people because they, small community at this point. But in my opinion, in terms of the React style routing, this one is probably the most prevalent. There's another one that's really TypeScript oriented, but it's not. It doesn't use this kind of JSX style routing, React router kind of approach. So this should hopefully.
I want to have a link here. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I want to be able to navigate.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if there's. Yeah, I think link is fine. I think there's a couple different types of links and stuff. But he uses href instead of. Oh no, maybe he uses two. Right.
I think you're right. He uses href.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I guess it isn't exactly React router, but it's the same. You can see it's the same kind of,
Let's add another link here. Yeah, I think it's close enough. I still feel kind of like at home. Not at my place, maybe at some friend's house or apartment, but still kind of cozy. Yeah. Go home, let's say. Ref would be root. Okay. But of course. Okay. Go to checkout, go home. Now we can start moving the components to separate files. For example, we can move home to a new file, right?
Yeah.
And we can start implementing the data fetching because my server is already running. It's on port 4000, and we can get data from it.
Cool. Yeah. I'm so excited where this stuff is heading, especially with the new Vite starter. We're going to do it React style right now. In the future, this stuff is going to be really cool. We're going to do file-based routing, where you basically we could just like stick the file in the pages, kind of like Next.js kind of style. And more than that, I've been developing a paradigm with kind of data components, I call them, where we can have the router doing parallel fetching for you between the data, and have suspense and transitions basically automatically handle like all the like data loading in a way that's non-cascading. So like where this is heading is really cool. Even automating that kind of stuff was like kind of server component style. Like I've been looking at all that stuff. But today is going to be React. This is the baseline. I hope people will kind of get a good feel for it from this. But we're already in the works of some really, truly next-gen kind of stuff.
That's really awesome. Could you please show what is file-based routing? Because I don't know what it is at all.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm trying to think of the best way if there's an example. But like Next.js has it. It's basically the idea that instead of defining the routes in the file, like you did there, where you had like your switch and match statements, you actually let's see here if I can find an example. You just stick pages in a pages directory, and then the router automatically discovers it based on
like Next.js.
What?
Like Next.js.
Yes, exactly.
You have a convention if it's in certain folder or it starts with certain prefix. That's it.
Vite gives you that almost out of the box. So anybody who makes a Vite library just gets that. They have to write a very simple glob import, and it's incredibly powerful because I'm using that to do a lot of automation, not just for generating the routes, but also for splitting out parallel data fetching. And as I said, in the future, auto-generating APIs based on the route to create almost like something similar to React server components without doing like the full diffing thing. Just kind of like a way of, writing SQL directly in a component and having it always run on the server, yet be completely single page app spa kind of thing, using suspense to stream stuff in. The funny thing is I have most of this already working. Like you can use, I just don't have it packaged up, so to speak, in a nice usable way. So that's what I'm working on. Like I made a Hacker News example a few weeks back, and it showcases all this, but it's just.
Can you please send the link? I will attach it to the video so people can check this out, because you say so many awesome things that I'm eager to see and try and check out and play with them. So awesome.
Yeah, I will get that in there. For sure. It's on a specific branch of the Solid Hacker News project, so it's not always people kind of skim over it, but here's the link to the specific branch, and I'll just post it in the general chat, I guess.
It might not allow you to do this, so if you send it to general chat, if it goes through, it goes through, awesome, but please also send it to the private chat, and I will attach it to the video so everyone can check out those links later.
Yeah, so this is the SSR branch here. And what this example does, it's fully TypeScript. It uses Solid's progressive async rendering, which does suspense on the server to stream into suspense boundaries on the client. It's also deployed to a Cloudflare worker, so it does this all at the edge. It's basically like the craziest Hacker News example you're probably gonna see. I mean, it's a simple example, but when you realize, if you click on the link, like the comments, that's where, if you want to see into the like what's going on, you want to do that one. Basically, this is all cloud edge rendered using progressive server rendering, and it's using actually suspense and suspense transitions here. It's so fast you don't see the stale state. So
exactly. Let's try it again. Let's pick something else. Where is a lot of 500? What is it? 556.
Yeah.
Boom.
But you see how I don't have the pending state there, but what you're seeing is it's using transitions. So it actually holds the previous navigation in view while it renders the other stuff in the background using suspense.
And do you know, and at the moment, you actually know that it's holding this state, and you can have some nice preloader.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's basically the if you've seen the React experimental data fetching branch or whatever, this is just a I've had this in Solid since last summer. I've been watching what React's been doing. They've been doing some really cool stuff. So this is implemented in Solid. Yeah,
this is very cool. I'm legit impressed. That's cool.
Yeah, and the progressive rendering, you don't really see it unless you benchmark it. Like grab the latest Kit demo and stick it next to it. They're both on Cloudflare, but Solid loads faster because it doesn't block to render the async. It actually starts streaming the request back immediately, and then it like uses suspense to stream the data in. So it's basically, and they're all on the edge. It's basically like I think one of the fastest ways to do dynamic content. Obviously, static site generation is faster. If you can pre-render something, obviously it's faster. But in terms of like on-demand dynamic content, this is one of the fastest ways, and it converts seamlessly into a single-page app afterwards.
Stupid fast performance. Yeah, it's super fast. It's really awesome. Do you actually plan to create maybe a course about Solid and tell there all those awesome things?
Yeah. I mean, eventually. I've just been doing so much work. We're starting to get a team here. We're starting to get people working on the project and some real core contributors. But this, started mostly me by myself, and I've been working on it since, like, as I said, 2015, 2016. I've open sourced it in 2018. At the beginning of the year, I realized, like, I was starting to, share this with others, in terms of getting really good performance. And then later, once React hooks came out later in the year, I was like, oh, people might actually be into this. I honestly thought that no one would like hooks like syntax. We had hooks in 2010, right? It's not like React came up with this, right? And like it's different than hooks, but we had these reactive primitives, and React basically killed them dead with their whole, don't care how to updates, render everything. And somehow React then changed their message. So that's a game changer, and it kind of really enabled these things. Solid plus WebAssembly.
Yeah, what do you think?
Some people have been working on some WebAssembly implementations of the reactive core. Like, basically, this is based on a type of reactive programming, which I feel could be well defined. I've been writing articles on that too. I call it fine-grained reactive programming, and I've been seeing people writing fine-grained reactive programming in Rust. So I see potential there. I'm just, maybe if AssemblyScript or TypeScript can get me a bridge into WASM, it might be a good approach. Personally, I'm not a Rust programmer per se. I haven't looked into that as much. I've always been passionate about JavaScript. I used to be doing full stack. Like I worked in .NET backends and all that stuff, but really, I've experienced in C and C# and VB and all that, and Java, but even a bit of Rails actually. But but for me, like when I got back to JavaScript, when everything went Node, it was just like, yes. And I like JavaScript. So I'm probably not going to be the one chasing this up, but I've been seeing really promising things. I think there's a library called Maple written in Rust that came out recently that uses fine-grained reactivity and kind of a lot of the concepts in Solid and Rust. I think one of the interesting things here, just while I can talk about WASM, even though I think we should get back into doing the demo stuff a bit, is that we're kind of in this scenario where JavaScript frameworks and libraries have actually maybe this isn't it.
Not that one. Not Maple.js.
The one that should be in Rust. Maybe it's unless that. Yeah. Okay. I'm not.
libmaple. No, maybe not.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Maybe I'm just completely wrong. Okay. But the one thing I was gonna say about WebAssembly is that JavaScript ecosystem has developed in a really strange way. It basically had these limitations. So things like my JSX transform exist because we've had to eke out every last bit of performance out of the browser because we don't get a lot of code. We have to tree shake, dead code elimination like crazy, and we have to produce the most optimal instructions. People have been moving stuff to these other backend kind of like or WASM approaches, and while today WASM isn't as fast as Vanilla.js, it's a little bit slower, the libraries actually have been show a bigger difference than the JavaScript libraries to the Vanilla.js. And part of this, I wonder, is like when people try and use hyperscript, like people try and convert my JSX to hyperscript because that's like what the language can support. It's actually de-opt. Basically, I'm optimizing away from just JSX's functions. And we've kind of got to this like crazy amount of optimization in these compilers that I'm sure could be eventually implemented in these other languages and whatnot, but that's like where a lot of the JavaScript's getting performance these days. So like even if someone makes a library that looks like React and Rust, they're going to still have to do that extra work to actually get the performance. It's not as simple as like, now I'm in Rust, I'm fast. Even when the DOM bindings get faster than, or as fast as vanilla or faster, I think they're actually going to have to change the way they're writing libraries. So yeah, man. Oh, great general questions. People just keep on shooting them. How are we doing on the example? I don't want to get too far off. I mean, I can talk on this stuff forever. Someone's asking me about Hotwire and Turbo and Stimulus.
Actually, let's go. The live demo is only here so we keep being busy if no one asks questions, because questions and interaction are way more important than whatever we write today. People can check out the code anywhere. So
yeah. So basically, Hotwire and Turbo are incentives that are interesting. I think React server components are really the natural answer to that, and similar type approaches that are being explored in some of the JavaScript libraries. But there's a distinct difference. See, Hotwire and Turbo and Stimulus, stuff like this has existed in some form or matter for 15 years. These are not new. Like even to a certain degree, update panels in .NET are that same concept. This idea of kind of like doing these partial page reloads to kind of reload sections of the page and have them server render. And it solves the problem of losing client state. You don't want to reload the whole page. But the challenge I have with this is you're almost maintaining two apps conceptually. Like you notice how you said Hotwire and Turbo and Stimulus. Like Turbo, I understand is the technology, and Turbo links underneath Hotwire, so that's fine. That gets buried. But then you're using Stimulus. Like you're basically, you have your Rails app or whatever backend you're using, and then you have your JavaScript app, and then you're kind of like managing these, and you're like, okay, conceptually, this is the JavaScript app, and this is how I manage state in this, and then this is the Rails app, and let's render this. If you like that separation, that's good. But like the difference that's like the modern JavaScript full-size environment can give you, and possibly when we get WASM working nicely, is you can write your code in like a singular way. Like you're just building one app, one logic structure, and it just works. And people just haven't seen that today. And so they have a hard time picturing just how crazy beneficial this is. This is only really possible when you can make up for some of the performance issues and handle this seamlessly. Otherwise, it's just not worth the effort. And like a perfect, like suspense, people might not know, it wasn't developed for the client originally. It was developed for the server. They realized that they could use suspense as a placeholder mechanism so that they could do the rendering in progressively from the server. And this is not a new idea, actually. It goes back to the dawn of the web and streaming, but no one really implemented it that much. And I'd actually say that the modern form of this actually originated, if you want to see what this looks like, this perfect kind of sort of isomorphic experience of developing on JavaScript, you only have to look as far as Marco.js. It's been doing this since 2014. And really, it's uncanny. You read these articles from the Marco creator back in 2014. He's describing suspense. Like they solved that with Marco at eBay 7 years ago, and it's been used in production at eBay this whole time. I'm going to mention a bias. This is my day job now. After working on Solid, these guys recruited me. So, I do have a slight bias there, but honestly, this is probably the most advanced server-side JavaScript rendering solution that has anyone seen. As I said, you'll be seeing this stuff coming to React in the next year or so, but they've been doing this in Marco for like 8 years. Like in production, you could have been using it. So, like generally speaking, Marco has its own issues because it had to carve out a server-side solution in a time period when no tools were friendly to that. So it had to maintain its own stuff over time, and it's taken a long time to kind of move on to the kind of more modern tooling for that reason. But on the other hand, it actually is a complete proof of concept of how this can work. Where I also wrote a Hacker News example for Marco a little while ago, and you just write the web page and you write the async fetching and you just write it right in there, similar to, maybe how you do it with Svelte or something. And it just works. There's no like, oh, this is like, maybe there's like, oh, this runs on the server and this runs on the client part. But generally speaking, you're not thinking too much about that. And you're not like going, oh, this is the JavaScript app, this is the Rails app. You literally just write a single app. And I can't impress enough how different that feels. And I'm creating the same kind of feeling in the new Vite starter with Solid. And SvelteKit is actually doing this sort of thing. But the biggest difference, obviously, is I've been able to use some of the performance techniques and optimizations used in Marco with Solid. And that just puts it in, as we saw in that other Hacker News demo, in a completely different league right now than what something like Svelte is doing today, or React, or pretty much most JavaScript frameworks. They haven't got there yet. We're JavaScript frameworks and server-side rendering are in their infancy, in my opinion, except for like Marco.
Yeah, I want to try them now as well. I hadn't tried Marco yet. It's really interesting.
It's like the opposite paradigm. I love the JavaScript control thing. I was talking all about that at the beginning. Marco is like, I just want to make a website. Here's an HTML page. Just like write some HTML. And it just literally automatically progressive renders, automatically streams. It basically does server components without anyone thinking about it. I know not what we're here for today. It has its own syntax, which definitely catches some people up. But this is just like, if React and Solid are JavaScript first, Marco's HTML first. It's just like this kind of, you just write some HTML and do your thing. To be fair, Marco's also going through a big redesign. Since I joined the team, we're actually working on a new version that right now Marco uses a virtual DOM in the client. It's like Svelte, so it's completely compiled to different output targets, but it's going to be using a reactive system and whatnot. But as I said, this is another thing for me. I'm approaching both approaches. I want to know. I don't know which wins in the end. Like, are we going to see a JavaScript kind of mentality, control, kind of approach, or is language going to win, right? Marco's very much on the Svelte side. Solid's very much on the React side. I get the benefit of basically being able to work on React and Svelte, both of them.
That's cool. And then evolution will decide whatever happens. There will be an approach to programming.
Exactly. People can choose. I've met people who are really into the different elements. Some people ask me for features that are in Marco, and I'm like, I will probably get there eventually, but Marco was made for this. And people on the Marco side are like asking for stuff in Solid. I'm like, same thing. I'm like, well, you can do this in Marco, but like this is made for it. So we're going to see that these will eventually converge. But right now, I get to basically explore huge design space and understand the differences between frameworks. This is sort of a really nice position for me because, as you guys know, I do a lot of benchmarking and I look at a lot of frameworks, and I kind of take pride in myself and be able to basically understand the inner workings of every popular JavaScript framework, like dozens of them. And that helps me kind of figure out how to best design all of them. So I spend a lot of time doing research and looking at how different frameworks work.
My initial idea about the stream with you was to actually discuss the design of Solid in very broad strokes. Like, what is there? What kind of entities do exist there? And how do they communicate and perform the results? Yeah. If that would be possible in, like, what do we have? We have 1 hour, I think, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Let's go back to the stream. Let's go back to the app. I can get out there a lot, but I think people are getting mostly answers to their questions. Oh man. This is a hot area though. Like, I understand why there's questions here, and I can go more and more, but maybe there's another form. Let's do a little bit more examples before we go on to more questions. Exactly. Although I would love to tell you about partial hydration at some point.
All right, so we are now at the home page. I think we should check out what was happening here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm actually gonna copy the whole thing.
Yeah.
And paste it here. We will probably need to have the product card mocked out. We will move it to a component later. And I have a custom hook that returns the data. So I'm going to just define the product card here for now. It's going to be the component that returns. You have fragments here as well that will say product card.
That's interesting. The hook is being passed in as a prop. Am I understanding that properly? Basically it's a dependency injection, and a lot of people don't like it. The way it's done here,
might not be very nice because it's not clear if it's something that you're supposed to pass to it. So maybe I would actually do it. Wait, sorry. I would actually do it like this with an underscore, so people see that it's not something that is supposed to be used
Okay.
in production. But it greatly simplifies testing.
Okay.
Because you just pass another function there, and that's it. Mocking is super easy.
Okay.
So yeah, and the use products, for now, we can also define it.
Question here is, it's funny, the import React from React is still there, but are we almost at like a state where I know we've broken it, but it's runnable again? I guess we should go a little bit further first.
What is the question though?
I was just wondering if like how far are we from this being runnable again?
Let me see. What is it complaining for? Type null is not assignable.
Yeah. We need the props, the use. Yeah.
And an object that has categories, and it can be an empty array, I guess. And then is loading false, and then error be null. I think it's all right. Is it runnable? No, not yet. Category name. Okay, what is this? Why is it complaining?
What's the key? Do you need this?
No, the key is reacting because we're inside of the loop.
Oh yeah. Don't worry about that. We don't need keys here.
Type map. What here? Does the system type never? Categories. I need the type for the products. Okay, how to do it better? I think if we just say that use products returns an object. Okay, this looks stupid. I'm going to define another type.
Okay. Eventually, this use products is probably going to return a function that returns this data. If you notice, the biggest pattern with using Solid is because of all the lazy evaluation. We have a lot of thunks. And this is one of the reasons I like the JSX compiler, because I hide those thunks from people. But when you're writing hooks and composition, you're going to be passing around a lot of, like, if you're not familiar with what I mean by thunks, but like functions that have no arguments that return the whatever the payload is.
Functions, basically.
Yeah. You're going to have a lot of these. For now, we don't need it because it's static, but essentially the whole trick to how Solid doesn't rerun everything every time is that it passes functions around that are getters. Sometimes it's proxies, sometimes it's, like hidden and really nice looking, but generally speaking, everything is lazy evaluated.
What else is missing? Name, items. Categories is wait a second. Refers to a type, but is used. Of course. Sorry. Let's call it null for now.
Okay.
I just don't want to copy types. I think it's almost ready. The items have names.
They don't need a key yet.
Let's say they have name only.
Okay.
Why is the home complaining still? Datum. Yeah, product card. It needs to receive the props.
One thing that you're not going to want to do, and this is a kind of warning for you. This is the gotcha. I was telling you about the functions. The gotcha is you don't want to destructure props in your.
That's good that I actually made this mistake.
This is the one. Everyone's like, "What's the catch?" This is the catch. I don't think it's a big deal. Some people have tried to come up with really clever ways to get around this. None of them are foolproof. Or they involve trade-offs that I'm not willing to make. The biggest thing for me is I want it to be easy as a component author and consumer to not have to think about what's reactive and what's not in terms of props coming in. I want you to go, I don't need to care what the person passed me. Did they pass me a signal or did they pass me a value? I don't want you to worry about that. So I use a simple getter setter set for props. So you always just access it the way you do in React, but under the hood, you're actually kind of creating a stream. But generally speaking, the cost of that is do not destructure your props at the top of your component. You access your properties where you use them. That's just like the rule. It's the big trade-off.
Here,
you lose reactivity here. If you want to do that, you have to wrap that in like an effect or a memo. Memo is probably the right one. You have to wrap that into create memo or a function. So generally for simple stuff like this, just don't do it. You can. I have examples where I destructure on purpose to make things not reactive. I have examples where I destructure stuff inside memos or effects in order to like access the properties and work with them. Like that's perfectly fine. It's just stuff outside of the effects of the JSX are not going to ever re-render. So it's only the stuff inside the JSX or inside the hooks that actually re-render. That's why you don't get stale closures. Like it's the outside world never renders again. So this is the trade-off, and it's one of those, it's one of those ones where it's tricky, as I said, because I purposely destructure in places to keep things static, and you can destructure inside or outside. I think it's kind of the level of a linting rule, probably. If we want to go there, it's kind of like putting the hook dependencies. If you notice in Solid, you don't have to put the dependency array on the end of your hooks. It automatically detects that, which makes things a little nicer. But as I said, the catch, the one catch here is we don't get to destructure props. Vue and 3 and MobX have this exact same sort of issue. They are less granular, so you might not feel it all the time, but it's the same reason that you can't just like your setup functions can't into your render. You can't like destructure stuff in your setup functions. You will lose reactivity. The setup function only runs once in Vue 3. And it's the same thing. So there you go. Now you know the ugly truth about Solid is you can't destructure outside.
If you know the reasoning, and you can always create an ESLint rule.
Yeah.
Just like the rules of hooks. And I think this is not as big catch or downside. Just good to know.
Yeah, it's the one. Yeah. All right, cool.
Well, what I'm doing, okay.
Yeah, where are we?
We need to have the API function, and the hook sort of will work kind of like this. Of course, there shouldn't be React, and we need to have some reactivity. Here, we're going to discuss an interesting thing, like how are we going to fetch the data and have all those handle the flags. I'm going to copy the API function from the project. It should probably stay exactly the same.
I mean, we can keep the React create effect or change it from use effect to create effect. Like we can keep that API for now. The truth of the matter is Solid comes built in with its own resource API that works very similar to. It looks almost like React Query or SWR, and it's made with Suspense, but it's still. This is the last API that I'm nailing down for release, and I built it with Suspense in mind. So to get the error state, I actually realize I'm not exposing it right now as I'm looking at it here, because the way I was handling errors and with resources was the way you handle it in Suspense, where a Suspense boundary would catch it and hit it in an error boundary. But looking at this example, which is very kind of simple, it's probably beneficial just to have the error also accessible off the resource so that you could do easy stuff like this. So for that perspective, maybe we just, how do we want to do this? Okay. We can kind of keep this mostly the same. Let's just do the straight React swap over of the equivalent thing. So everything that's used state should be. Everything that's used state here should be changed to create signal.
Do I need to import it?
Yes. It'll be right on Solid.js. Yeah.
Wait a second. What is going on? I'm probably using the wrong keyboard layout. I'm very confused. I think my Vim extension kind of died and stopped listening to some of
to answer the question about the thunk we used to keep a prop reactive, definitely yes. You can just access it in a thunk. It's just in terms of destructuring. You were talking about like converting objects into a bunch of thunks based maybe on a bunch of keys. I can make a helper like that, but that helper won't help you like inside the REST parameters of the component call necessarily. But yes, that's how I pass the reactivity around all the time. It's really easy just to wrap something in a thunk. You basically turn it into a signal right away. And if you're wondering what a signal is, what we just did here, a signal is a very simple getter function. We usually paired with a setter, but not necessarily. It's the thing that tracks. It's the most simple primitive data. So now the effect of this is, and okay, another thing you can do right here is you don't need. You can because of the way we work, change use effect to create effect. That's a solid equivalent, and pass it an async function.
That's super awesome. Because before you had to remember that it's very tempting to do this, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, you can do this. But this isn't the best API. I have like a tighter API for this, but yeah, you can just get rid of that, and you can get rid of the dependency array as well. The one thing here is this never runs again. Actually, you know what? This never runs again, does it? Whatever. We can keep it in effect if we want. The truth of the matter is, if this never runs again, you don't even need to wrap it in a create effect. But
that's not.
Okay, well, yeah, if this only ever runs once, I mean, you still need to make this an async. You still need to wrap it in. Now you have to wrap it in an async function again. Because a component can't be async.
Yeah, of course.
It make it blocking, which doesn't make sense from a granular standpoint. But you can do this.
We have a function, and then we have it like this, self-invoking.
Exactly.
Oh no, it's not done like this.
Async. Yeah. So yeah, if this only ever loads once, then I mean this.
Yeah. Only when the application starts, we fetch. I don't poll for data. If I don't get it first time, boom, error.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, cool. So we have the use product hook. That's nice. And you see I'm doing this thing, dependency injection here as well, to test the hook.
Yeah, the reason we can do this, as I said, is because the component doesn't rerun again. So this hook is just, a convenience for returning these out. I mean, I think that's fine. The thing you have to remember here is that categories is loading and error are all going to be functions. If you don't want them to be functions, I should make a helper function for this to be fair, but if you don't want them to be functions, you can wrap those in a getter. But maybe it's fine for now. We just leave these as functions. There's always a way that you can return objects that have getters. So you can just go like get category, return categories executed. But I'm gonna make a helper in the future that makes that easier. But yeah, just understand that these are all getters. Like these are all functions.
I think it's better to rename them because otherwise it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, people are somewhat used to it in Solid, obviously, because of the scenario. But I think a naming convention is very helpful. And I said I often wrap these in getters so that they look like props. So essentially, you can just access them on the object instead of like having this function. Because like when you pass them like functions like this, you get the destructure. Just on a side note, because this is what the kind of question was here. But yeah.
Okay. Now we rename it.
Yeah. So this actually, yeah, and this works fine. So you can destructure like this because you're just passing signals out. So this is why it's not simple. Like you can understand, it's not simple to say no destructuring, because like it depends. I try and build an environment that's consistent, so you don't have to worry about this. But generally speaking, it is defined by your API.
Let's define them as the getters then.
Do you want to do getters? Sure. Okay. So then,
yeah. I'm thinking, is it better? So how I understood that? What I understood now that I cannot do this again.
No, this right now you can, but if you switch it to getters, you can't, because then the property access would make it. So this should be fine. I don't know why It's just that the return type, the typing is wrong.
Return type. Then I think, yes, exactly. To keep it less confusing for the React developer, let's keep it functions instead of getters.
Okay.
I think it's better. Yeah, and let's fix the type. The use product hook, get categories. Yeah, of course, because it's... I am very tempted to call it any, or actually just use the return type of use products. And it's fine.
Yeah.
Why is it complaining now? Can't find name is loading. Yeah, of course.
Okay, so this is the first thing that you're going to hit here. See how you're doing a bunch of if statements here.
Okay.
This kind of approach isn't going to fly, generally speaking, because again the components run once. So it's actually easier to pull everything into either separate components or in the same view, essentially. So what we want to do here is we basically have a few conditions here. We want to kind of compress this out. So the easiest way to do that is basically use probably solid show component, essentially. Like we want to pull these conditions into the view, so to speak.
What do you mean?
Well, actually, it's funny in this scenario. I know this only runs once, so what you have here is actually perfectly fine, because actually no, because it's async, it's not fine. Yes, so
yeah,
sorry.
it's not fine because it's going to be loading, and then boom, we're stuck.
Right.
Actually, let's see. We should be stuck. Yeah, and we are stuck.
Yeah, and the reason we're stuck is because this only executes once. So what we actually want to do is pull this all into our template. It almost picture like you were using Svelte or whatnot. You want basically let's replace the fragment with a yeah. I mean, this is the easiest way, but yeah, we also have special components for this. Like if you replace the fragment with a show component, yeah, and
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you replace the fragment, I think the whole thing's wrapped in a single fragment, right? And then go show when not is loading. I mean, this is not going to catch the error state, unfortunately, but this now, and then if you get rid of that.
Sure. Good. Let's call it a success for now. Yeah, but what if I have error as well? Another show?
Yeah, or we can change this to switch. Like I mentioned, like have the conditionals. We can change the show to switch. Yeah, and then
if I remember correctly, show is basically an equivalent of React and end.
Yeah,
if you have Boolean, just one Boolean that you're gonna check, it's show.
Yeah, we can also do ternary. There's a fallback if you want to say like an else. Like if we haven't added this yet, but you should go fallback. Add fallback to show.
Fallback.
Yeah, equals, and then put in a component like a loading component or whatever you had there for the loading.
Let's just have a component. It should be a function, right? It's
no,
not just
it doesn't have to be a function. All props are lazy evaled, so you can get rid of the function here.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
And it should have a closing tag.
Yeah. So now if we can get to it fast enough and you refresh, you should actually see the loading happening. I
think we can bork the internet. Network. I forgot how to do it. Maybe someone will help us.
Yeah, on the should be a dial like on the corners to the settings tab. The lower one, not that one. Sorry. There's a lower one in the corner that's blue.
This one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, yes. Oh, okay. Go to performance tab instead of network tab.
Performance.
This is now hit the dial. Online, where it says online. Oh, I guess that was on the other one too. Slow 3G maybe.
I don't think it's going to be enough.
Oh yeah, because the page loading. Oh,
yeah, it's enough. Cool. Nice. Okay, let's remove the throttling. Nice. And you said that there is also a switch that is kind of like ternary operator, or it's two different things?
Yeah. Well, the switch lets you have more than just one condition. The switch will
want to have now because of the error.
Yeah. So if you change show now to switch, and then the way switch works is the switch itself can have a fallback, but the whens now move on to a sub component called the match. You need to import match as well, so it's import switch and match. As I said, you can use ternaries, like you can go ham and do it the React like ternary way. This is just cleaner than having like a whole bunch of chain ternaries. So move the, let's see, what are our conditions? It's when is loading.
Yeah, we have match. What? Match.
Well, what do we want to match? We want to.
Yeah. We have two different fallbacks. That's the problem. Because when it's an error, we just show error message.
Yeah. The when is on the match though. Like you can move the when onto the match. So when is how about let's do it so it's like when is.
Actually, when is loading.
Yeah, then the default's going to be the fallback. Like, I mean, it depends on how you want to do it. We can also make it. Yeah, I think that's probably the way we're going to do it here. As I said, it's been a while since I've done it this way because I've been using suspense so much recently. But I feel like for people who aren't familiar with suspense, it's kind of it's not as obvious. You know, I mean, if we didn't want to use fallback, we just do when true on the last one. But you know what I mean? Like otherwise, this content all ends up in fallback. But we can also make it match true if we want. You know what I mean? Like
it's just nicer here. It reads better.
Yeah, exactly. Just put true in here. Yeah, exactly, and then drop our stuff in. Yeah, you can see, and you can get rid of the if get error. The funny thing about I
completely forgot and didn't even see it.
But the funny thing about this is, did you see how our code actually compressed by going this way? Like it looks like but it actually visually compresses because you're not like escaping in and out of JavaScript curly brace contexts, right?
Well, you could actually do it here one line as well.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Okay. For it. But I usually avoid one line ifs completely because you can accidentally use it somewhere and then someone refactors it and now it's multi-line and people expect it to work, but it doesn't. Yeah. So basically, the one thing, this is another thing, you kind of get used to almost like, the thing is these control flow components, I wrote them, but you could write them yourself. They're just components, so they follow all the same rules. I like this flexibility. You already saw it actually in the router. Somebody wrote their own match component to declaration,
right? I was talking about the control flows. The router implementation is an example of this. Someone wrote their own match component. Like these are just components. You know how like in some ways you might think them similar to like view if or view for, all that kind of stuff that you find in Vue and Svelte. But on the other hand, they are literally just components that someone can write. A normal map statement isn't going to work in a reactive sense without a VDOM because it's going to recreate every element every time. Whereas we need to be smarter, so we need helpers. I just find it very convenient to write these as reusable components. It's just more components. Like everyone knows how to write a component.
So I should write import the map, right? No.
Or it's for.
Oh.
Yeah, I call it for, but yes, we can replace, yeah. In this case, the products never change. Obviously, map is perfectly thing, but it's each. Each equals get categories.
And where will I get the item or category in this case?
Yeah, just take the callback function. Like just get the category. Like take the inside of map here. Like
I don't get what they want.
Like it's a render prop. Yeah, like just open curly braces inside the get out of the tag, and then curly braces is in the children.
Let's start over. Okay, I take here this thing.
Well, you actually want the whole thing. You want the function. You want the category. You want the like the whole function you pass to map.
I want this.
Yes.
It's a render prop. Okay.
And then replace that with just make sure to put the opening and closing brackets for the JSX.
Yeah, sure. 1 second. This is correct, and this is gonna be correct as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Does it understand what is the type? Yes. Awesome.
Yeah, and then you can get rid of the other thing.
I can get rid of the whole thing here, and I can rewrite this as a for.
Yeah.
Each equals category items.
Yeah.
And here I have a render prop. I'd rather have the round brackets.
Yeah, you're getting rid of some like the explicit returns and stuff, which helps compress it too. But you can kind of see the effect that happens when you do this, like extra. Yeah, there. No, we missing.
Is missing. This one is closing this. This is this. This is here. This is that.
Yeah, those extra brackets after the for loop just don't need to be there.
Yeah, actually, you're right. Okay. Yeah, it's so much more compact.
Yeah, I actually like writing code this way. Like, you know.
And I see why. It's actually looking better, cleaner, easier to read.
Yeah.
For each categories, do category. This thing, yeah. Nice.
Let's double check that still renders properly.
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, I guess it does. Yeah.
I would like to show images. Let's create maybe the product card. Let's define the product card. And we can get back to answering questions because I think this is the satisfactory stage of the project. So folks who are watching this, let us know if we should continue the coding or answer the questions. I'm gonna just implement the product card for now. Card. Oh, that's actually not that easy. I can make them dysfunctional by only having the layout, getting the image from the datum.
Yeah.
And remove the bottom.
The thing to remember, right? I mean, you can keep all this logic here. Even it's in the JSX, so you can keep all these ternary and stuff. If you copy that whole thing, it should work. Because once you're in the data, you're not like the only signal is the data being loaded. The rest of the stuff is never re-renders. It's not like that reactive, so it's mostly a stale layout. So I imagine you could just drop the whole thing in. Ternaries in the JSX and in Solid are reactive. I analyze them and convert them into reactive memos. So in theory, it's just it's that part where we have to do. But the rest of this, if we keep static, it should all just kind of come in. Let me see these. Oh, image rendering style. The style objects in Solid use the CSS style one, so you can do stuff like CSS bars and stuff with it. So you actually, and they're not camel case, so you have to make that into the dash case with the string. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, with the string. So I did it correctly.
Yeah, and you're missing oh yeah, I mean you can do that too. I was saying we do support the object form. The object form just takes string operators, but yeah, you can just do that too. Yeah, I guess that's easier.
Still not working.
What are we even seeing this at all though? Like I guess
should be seeing this. Let's look at the section has items. What? Wait a second. Let's go to the home component and see what are we rendering. For each category, we're rendering a product card.
Is it still our stub?
We're still using this one. Yes, exactly. Import product card from product card.
To answer the question, there's one question related to the for loop. I mentioned this before. If you use map, you can use map and it works. It's just when you map over something, when the data changes, you map everything again. So if you're mapping data to DOM elements, you're recreating every DOM element every time data updates because there's no virtual DOM. So the way that I approach this is, and most reactive libraries, you'll see this like in MobX or something, there'll be like a map function. I just decided that wrapping it in a component is a more consumable way from a UI standpoint. But technically speaking, we have to do memoization in our control flows if we're not going to use a virtual DOM. So that's basically why there's the for component here. For stuff that I can analyze language-wise, like ternary operators and booleans, I can do this automatically for you. But for a .map function, that's an arbitrary function. I have no clue how you're going to call map. It's just a function. So it's easier just to I can't really do that with the compiler. So I use like an explicit helper, and using a component is an easy way to do it.
All right, and I see that I've screwed up with the images a little bit because they're static and I need to copy them. Will it work the same? Can I just copy them from the, I think they're in the public folder.
Yeah, this should work because it's just create React app. So
let's just make the right folder. Yeah, cp -r. What was it? What was my initial React solid migration, React to solid migration. Solid migration, public images. We copy them to public images. It will probably ask me to create the folder. No, it won't.
Sorry, Christian, the one, it is kind of like Angular View in that sense that there's helpers. I understand that kind of perspective. The biggest thing is I don't know if Angular, you can write the components. Like these are just components, kind of like we talked about at the beginning of the video. Like the router was just a component, and it actually reused some of these components that wrote some of their own. So we're seeing a lot of this kind of mixture of control flow logic and layouts in the components. The next question here, style components, perfect example. Yes, I do have a wrapper around a library called Goober for style components. So there's a solid style components library. So the pattern works completely fine here. Sorry, jumping around a bit into the questions when you're doing that, but
I think we're now in the state of the project. Let me show what we ended up with. That is sort of fine. Do we want to continue? Let's vote in the comments. If you want to continue, we have like 15 to 20 minutes, something. But I'd rather just ask Ryan because he knows a lot. So I think if we answer the questions, it's going to be much, much more fun and cool. Let's wait for people to vote. I don't know. How do we vote? Send the message live coding if you want us to continue live coding, and questions. Just send your questions if you have them.
Well, I mean, if we sit there and stretch for a second, I guess I can at least answer one of the more question while we're waiting. There was a question a bit earlier about debugging, and what was I going to say here? Where is it? Where is it? I tried Solid out a few times in the last couple of years, but I found debugging pretty difficult, even with fresh projects. Would this be due to the source? Would this be due to source maps or the nature of JS proxies? It's an interesting one because it's like a trade-off kind of debug experience. Like on one hand, when you're talking about the actual DOM updates and stuff, because the compiler just like spits it out in front of you, like there is a source map aspect where you're like, oh, I'm in the JSX, I don't know what it's doing. I generally don't look at the source maps for the JSX. I almost always look at the compiled stuff because I know what it looks like, obviously. But generally speaking, the output puts all the DOM operations right in front of you. Like you see the set attribute calls, like there's no layer in between. Like with Solid, when a div element, JSX is an actual HTML div element. If you went const div equals bracket div, like JSX div, and go next line console log div, you will get an actual HTML element. And from that aspect, the debugging is like really like what you see is what you get. The challenge, of course, is with any reactive system, you have this sort of stuff kind of coming in all over the place because it's declarative. It respects order in terms of computational order, in terms of making sure derivations happen in the right order, but it's not in the top-down, my component re-renders kind of manner. So I can definitely relate. We've been working on dev tools recently, visualizations to can help in this. Almost every tool of this nature, whether XState, MobX, whatever, has visualization. And this is a place that I want to look into more. While there are tools for this, and I've seen them, for kind of granular reactivity like MobX or even like Overmind, the difference is people are used to having like components as like their React dev tools kind of thing. And the truth of the matter is, I kind of compile the components away. So this is a unique challenge. I have a dev mode with Solid where I'm actually trying to add the components back so that we can actually debug them. It's actually quite an exercise to try and kind of make Solid, like de-optimize Solid enough to get to a point where we can actually debug it. But that's kind of one of the areas I've been working on recently. So this story, around the debugging, hopefully should get a lot easier in the near future.
Nice. What else do we have? Can we use map array instead of for?
Yeah, but yes, you're talking about my internal method map array. Yeah, Solids has the methods also exposed for under some of the control flows. So like if you prefer using functions, you can use them. It's just it's just a helper function. So from that perspective, you can do that. I do like the components, but it's really up to you. There's like, I think that's pretty much the best way to put it.
All right. I remember that you also answered already the Angular question, right? While I was typing in the code.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we went through the most of the questions.
There was one other one, although I don't know if people have voted on the live thing. The only other one was what's currently the largest reason why Solid's HN example outperforms Svelte is due to the HTML streaming. Correct. Is partial hydration islands the next step frontier for this kind of performance? There's a couple things. Yes, I agree that the progressive rendering or HTML streaming is the biggest performance gain. I think that even though Solid technically renders faster, raw rendering, when it comes to the system holistically, it makes up such a small portion. When you make architectural decisions that affect the way data is loaded and the way like the server client communication happens, this makes a much bigger impact. That being said, partial hydration is a tricky one for single page apps. There are some interesting things like React is working on, but the truth of the matter is the way partial hydration works is we have to look at what components can be re-rendered on the client. If they can be re-rendered on the client, it's going to happen. Like React does have, with server components, it's talking about this way of streaming in content in, and even after the fact, but like we're still passing stuff over the wire in that case. Like if it's being rendered on the client, it's being rendered on the client. So if you have this multi-page app, this is very simple because if your routing is on the server, you're basically, the first decision point you're going to hit is some small island of interactivity. Maybe 80% of your page is static. If you have client-side routing, the first decision you hit is in that app component. It's like literally the first thing you hit, which means that you almost have to include all the code right off the bat. Like even Vue was looking at ways of like not sending it initially and all this stuff. But the problem is you're kind of compiling two different versions of the component. Like even if you could optimize that first load, if someone clicks away and clicks back, you need all that code again. Like essentially, if it can be rendered on the client in terms of, and it needs to be like in terms of statefulness, like basically there's a control flow, an if statement, a conditional for loop. If that's based off some kind of stateful control flow, the code needs to be in the browser, or a Livewire type solution. And while React is working that direction, I think we're going to hit like a certain point where there's going to be a decision made where do you want the extra weight of being able to support a system that does that, or do you just use a small library and figure that the scaling point will be that much further ahead? Because, for example, React is 40 KB, and their server components added an extra 10 KB, let's say. So now they're at 50 KB. A library like Preact or Solid is 5 KB.
10 times less.
And there's code splitting considerations. How many components do you need on that initial page to catch up to that 50 KB? You know what I mean? Like, there's other ways to, do stuff that kind of like server components without necessarily, get that monolithic API kind of back without necessarily, doing a diff engine on the client based on after the fact stream rendering. I think this is an interesting idea. I think ultimately, like when executed, this might be the way forward, but is a drastically more complicated than what we're doing today. And so it actually adds more JavaScript code. Like, as I said, the addition of server components to React is like another 2 preacts. Like I understand real application code makes up way more than the library code. Don't get me wrong. We've all seen hundreds of kilobytes JavaScript bundles when gzipped and brought lead even half a megabyte or megabyte. We've seen huge things. So 50 KB in the scheme of things isn't that big either. But I'm just saying, I suspect that there'll be different paths that different libraries take in terms of how to handle partial hydration. The truth of the matter is, in a lot of cases, within like a 10 KB, 20 KB range, you're not noticing the hugest difference on performance, especially in about a 10 KB range. So I think it will be interesting to see how these develop. My plan right now for Solid, because it's already granular and so small, is that I'm looking at ways that we can denote server type loading so that we can exclude code from getting ever added to the browser. I actually already have that with an isServer flag. The code splitting automatically works, so tree shaking technically. But in terms of actually server components and the full rendering diffing, I think that's an area that,
And it happens compile time, right? What you're talking about right now.
Yeah, I was talking about like React server components, which basically is like their answer to React to Hotwire. And I was saying that we're going to see some different developments in the next year on where this goes, because in a single page app, it takes a lot to make partial hydration work. So I do have to ask the question, yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. Yeah, sorry, I just saw the question here. Similar to React, make it seem like the bugging would be the same. Thanks for the explanation. It's a bit tricky. It's a little bit different. I find the DOM interception is nicer than trying to work through my way through HyperScript, but it's gonna be better soon.
Cool. And I think we've answered all the questions. The app is in a great state. Ryan, thank you for fantastic explanation. I've learned a lot. I don't know, maybe you remember. I remember you commented on my old video about Solid where I did everything wrong, basically. It was a small example where I abused the hooks, used them not how they are supposed to be, and had a lot of trouble. Now I know much more. That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to a course. If you're going to release one, that would be just awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I enjoyed being on. This has been my first chance to really dig into the code in one of these kind of interviewee YouTube channel kind of thing. So I'm super stoked and hope to do more of this and more training material for everyone to kind of get them familiar. It's similar, but there's still a lot here. So I really appreciate the opportunity here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
When are we hitting 1.0? 1.0 is actually coming out pretty soon. We're getting really close to stabilizing the final APIs. I wanted to kind of mention that right here. I've been working on this for quite a few years now, and with all the changes of server-side rendering the last couple of years, I wanted to be sure that I was happy where things are. And I put a release out, I guess, yesterday, which is pretty close to the final API. There's going to be a release candidate for 1.0 coming out in a week or so, and I'm hoping we'll see how that runs, obviously, but I'm hoping very soon you'll see a 1.0 version of Solid.
Awesome.
Could this maybe help? I'm not sure what the class name problem is, actually.
Yeah, exactly. What is class name problem? I'm also not sure.
Is that related to the previous?
Class list, not class name.
Oh, right. Yeah, this is a very specific thing. Solid has a special syntax around being able to basically use objects in classes. And I was looking at ways of using like namespaces with them, and it was just about talking about potential of using Babel macros to kind of convert stuff. And it's true. If someone's willing to make that decision to use that, then I could see people coming up with custom Babel transformations or custom macros to basically transform your code ahead of time before it goes into the Solid compiler. I use a similar approach with style JSX. Solid actually supports Vercel's style JSX. And all it is it's a pre-JSX compilation. So if there was a specific behavior that you wanted, like you really don't want to use the for loop component and you want to use like .map, you could use a transformation to do that. I just didn't want to do it because I don't think I can safely apply that to the generic case. But if someone really, really dislikes using a helper or whatnot and they just want to compile it, yes, you could, you have the AST there to make that decision. It's just not something that I think is a safe decision that I can make for everyone. Yeah. All right.
We're gonna wrap it up again. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan, so much. Fantastic job with the framework and with this stream. Just amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.